Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show, AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. I'm up in Minnesota, hey, for the next few days, having a wonderful time with my lovely Minnesota family, sending you all so much love. We've got a lot to talk about, a lot to talk about. And I want you to meet me on Blue Sky. So many of you have been meeting me over there. SantitaJackson.bsky.social and on Facebook, the Santita Jackson and Friends Facebook page. That's the only page where I can accept friends. Please, please go there. And at Santita J on X and the Santita Jackson Show. So many of you are joining. So please come on over here and like the show, thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up, and continue to share the show and like it and subscribe to my YouTube channel. We've got a lot to talk about. So much is happening. The tariffs, what impact will it have on us internationally, domestically? What is going on with the cost of living? We're living from payday to Monday, if we have a paycheck at all. More and more Americans are being fired, people who had very stable jobs. And it seems like there's no stability now. And now it seems that as we're watching permanent residents deported, as we're watching students who've been vetted and who've been led into the United States, as we're watching them be deported, I always wondered if that would begin to creep into the bloodstream, because that's cancer that's in our bloodstream. I wondered if you thought that it would hit Americans. How many of you have been told to go back to Africa or someplace? Yeah, so we've heard that. And now, I don't care where you're from, it seems that the president is looking for what he said the homegrown terrorists. He said, we also, quote, have homegrown criminals that push people into subways, that hit elderly ladies on the back of the head with a baseball bat when they're not looking. They are absolute monsters. He told reporters when he was meeting with the president of El Salvador, who are being paid to take in American prisoners. And so he continued, I'd like to include them, these Americans, in the group of people to get them out of the country. Now, this has sent a chill through the American legal community, through the academic community, and it should send a chill through our community, through the general community. What is he talking about? Deporting whom, where? To El Salvador, and for that president's uh, portion, the president of El Salvador said, "Well, we are paying them to hold these prisoners." He said, "We're looking at building 5 or 6 more prisons." What is going on, everybody? I want you to connect with me on Blue Sky, santitajackson.bsky.social, and on X at Santita J, and on the Santita Jackson and Friends Facebook page, and on this YouTube channel. What about Americans being deported? What about it? And when the Attorney General was asked about this, she couldn't give an answer. So, you know what? I've got two brilliant lawyers with me today who know far more than I. But I just thought it was very, very interesting that out of all that has happened, Mahmoud Khalil, we talked about this some time ago, Colleen Rowley and attorney Mark Fancher. Well, he was a permanent resident. He is a permanent resident. He was not only removed from his apartment building, and these agents who arrested him, or should I say absconded with him, didn't even identify themselves initially. They didn't take him to a jail in New York or New Jersey. They took him to Louisiana, but it took his wife more than a few minutes to find out where he was. Are we disappearing people in the United States? Yeah, we've done that before, but are we doing that in 2025 with our eyes wide open? Wow. Or are our eyes wide shut? So I want to hear from you. I want to know what your thoughts are. Attorney Mark Fancher, brilliant civil libertarian and author and great thought leader. I can't wait to get your thoughts. We're going to start with Colleen Rowley. Of course, you have been with the FBI. You became a whistleblower. You were pointing out the intelligence failures of 9/11, that horrific tragedy that visited upon Americans. And we're still living with the effects of that today as we have watched more and more of our civil liberties just really ripped away from us. Ripped away from us. So you tell me, um, what about just the idea of taking Americans who have, you're supposed to be innocent until proven guilty, but taking Americans and putting them in prison in El Salvador?
Well, I think there's been a long trajectory, historical trajectory since 9/11. And I have not read all of these so-called emergency memos that were written within 2 or 3 weeks after 9/11 by John Yoo, who actually could be credited with Trump's notion of imperial presidency. It goes all the way back 24 years. John Yoo wrote memos that said, we won't have the Bill of Rights. We won't have freedom of press anymore because it's a national emergency. He wrote it, and we can start torturing. We will have Guantanamo, which is outside the U.S. A lot of these, he's the guy that wrote the series of torture memos. So again, you go all the way back to 24 years, and those memos, with the exception of, I think, of only one or two of the most egregious ones, were ever rescinded. And so when the Department of Justice Attorney General Pam Bondi is asked, is this legal to deport American citizens? You know what? She can go back and find, if she looks in her Office of Legal Counsel memos written by John Yoo. And again, this is a notion, it's a theory called imperial presidency powers. And it's what everyone is now seeing on Trump, is that he's grabbing as much power as possible. The spokeswoman, she says, well, he's floating ideas, in meaning that he's saying some outrageous things, deporting American citizens. But obviously, it was also setting a terrible, notorious precedent to start torturing. They actually they drone bombed and killed American citizens. And even a 16-year-old and I think a 5-year-old or something, they've actually killed American citizens without due process in foreign countries. So these precedents have been set for a long time. And again, it's bipartisan, both parties. Although I will say Trump is taking this to a new level. He is building. And of course, people say, well, that El Salvador prison violates the Leahy laws, essentially that there's very no human rights. They have to sleep on metal bars. They don't even get out of their cell for any period of time. I mean, they're very inhumane. But again, the precedent was set that we don't care about our own laws in this country. There's like 3 different laws that say you cannot commit genocide. You cannot arm Israel that's committing a genocide. That's our own domestic laws. And since they set the precedent now and they say, well, we don't care about those things anymore. We don't care about laws. I will just say the ACLU, good luck. I hope that some of our civil liberties groups can really get on this now. And one thing that I was a whistleblower on, you said I'm a whistleblower on the failure of intelligence before 9/11 to share intelligence that could have prevented 9/11. Yes, I was also a whistleblower when the New York FBI started rounding up immigrants within days after 9/11. And they rounded up, it turned out to be nearly 1,000. And most of them were, green cards or something. They were imprisoned, and actually some of them were beat up because at the time it was Bush. And Bush gave the impression to the jailers that they were terrorists. Again, no due process, no trial. They were just detained, some of them for up to a year. And when I wasn't the only whistleblower, but I was one of the whistleblowers that said this was wrong. By the way, in Minnesota, we didn't do that. We actually said, oh, that's highly illegal. You can't just be rounding people up. And so we never did that. But in New York and other places, they did. And when this finally got revealed that it was that this was, an inspector general, I think, finally found that this was wrong and illegal. By that time, again, it was too late. People were beat up. They were all deported afterwards. And, then Ashcroft, the attorney general, refused to apologize. And he refused to apologize for a really egregious thing. This is why I say this has been a long time building, slippery slope from 9/11. And now we have a Trump who says, well, look at those precedents. We had Guantanamo. I think an American citizen, what you might remember, Mark, what his name was, but I want to say there was an American citizen sent to Guantanamo, and he was tortured and held with incommunicado from his attorney. And they actually forced him almost to turn mentally ill because of being tortured. I forget his name right now. So again, there's a precedent. I think there's been very bad precedents, and Trump is telling, well, we did it before. Can't we do it again? I honestly, it's totally illegal. And the ACLU has some very solid constitutional arguments. It's just a question if our courts will be brave enough to listen to the law at this point, or will they also cave? We have to hope that our courts will stand up.
Well, if the courts stand up, will the Trump administration pay attention? I mean, they have shown an inclination, at the very least, Colleen Rowley, to ignore the courts.
They've ignored judges. The one judge has ordered that the El Salvador, I forget his name, but Garcia, I think his last name is, and they said it was a mistake and that he should be returned. And they're not returning him right now. They're just defying once it's outside of the jurisdiction per se. This is a loophole, because once they do something and it's in a foreign country, then the United States can say, well, now it's out of our hands. We have no jurisdiction over it. It's in another country. So there's some big time problems. Normally presidents have been loath to usurp these powers because they think that it'll turn the American populace and the academics, the legal academics, across the board, it'll turn the country against them. But Trump is so assured of his support in his base that he's just going to this level that's unprecedented. Like I said, he's really exacerbating the horror of the situation, if you can say that. There are bad precedents, but he's really taking it to a new level.
Attorney Mark Bancher, what say you?
Well, I think the idea of deporting U.S. citizens is as American as apple pie. It's completely consistent with U.S. history, U.S. tradition. The ideas of disappearing people and torturing them is something that's been around as long as the country has been around. The difference is the concerns about that sort of thing change when those who are at risk of that become people who are not the others. So that certainly during the period of enslavement, torture and disappearance was something that was quite common, particularly for people who were rebellious. In fact, as the Civil War raged on, Abraham Lincoln considered seriously the idea of sending formerly enslaved African people to Haiti or to some other place to get rid of them because they were an unwanted population. The idea of sending free blacks in the North to Africa resulted in the creation of Liberia, which was a place where you got rid of an unwanted population. And even on into the modern era, because of the FBI's counterintelligence program, you had people who were arrested for no cause, people who became political prisoners for decades and decades, and people who endured torture and people who endured death. So, this is something that's quite common. I think what distinguishes what's going on now from what has happened in the past is that even though the US has always been a country which has oppressed and excluded and tortured and killed and done all kinds of horrible things to its citizens, there was always a concern that if it was to be done, it had to be done with a certain amount of finesse, that it had to be done in a way that would not be easily detectable or identifiable by the broad mass of people. And there were guardrails. There were courts that did take the law seriously, and who were willing to hold abuses of power in check if necessary. There were people with integrity who were serving in government, in legislative branches, whether at the national or the state level, who were willing to try and to control this type of abusive conduct. And there were people who held office, whether they were presidents or senators or whoever, who were concerned about their own image and who might have wanted to do terrible things, and who in fact did them. I mean, in fact, Dwight Eisenhower was upset with what Patrice Lumumba was doing in the Congo, and there are records of him having conversations with Alan Dulles from the CIA about how they were going to assassinate this man by putting poison in his toothpaste. I mean, so they did these things, but nobody knew about them because for that to become public knowledge would have been damaging, not just to them in terms of their ability to continue to function in whatever office they held, but they were concerned about reputation and legacy and all of that kind of thing and image. Uh, what you have in Donald Trump is somebody who basically says, "I ain't got nothing to lose." With his attraction and affinity for dictators around the world, I mean, this is something that he's probably always fantasized about. He's probably always wanted to be a dictator. Has awoken from many wet dreams with about him being someone who commands large numbers of people and dominates and imprisons and tortures them. Uh, he's going to go for it now. I mean, he's already had his constitutional limit of terms that he can serve as president. He's already been convicted as a felon 34 times. What more can you do to this man? And so he's going to do it. And I think that the question really becomes how do the broad masses of people in this country respond? Because it doesn't matter how badly Trump wants to be a dictator. The question is, will the country allow him to be a dictator? Because if you look at the Hitler experience, there were so many who said that they were just following orders. If they had not followed orders, we would not have had the Holocaust. If the order had gone out, march these people into the concentration camps, march them into the ovens, and those who were the soldiers said, "We will not do it," then they would not have. It would not have happened. One person does not make history. Only the masses of the people make history, and we're at a point where he is signing executive order after executive order, and the question is, how will this be received by the people? Will they look at them and comply with them and just follow orders and do all kinds of horrific, uh, terrible things? Or will they rip them up and say, "You want to do this, you go to court and get authority to do it, get an order directing me to do it as a matter of law. Otherwise, I will not do it." And I think that's what we're watching unfold right now.
What do you think, everybody? What do you think about deporting Americans, any place, Americans who've committed a crime or who are alleged to have committed a crime? Colleen Rowley, help me to understand what citizenship is in the first place. I mean, is not the right to not be deported foundational? I mean, because we execute, we're back to executing prisoners, right? The government can kill you, they can do anything to you, but deport you, Mark, I understand your point. I hear you because we do have this history. I think it's just, I think a lot of people are just stunned. And so, Colleen Rowley, help me to understand what what we're seeing here. I mean, what is this? I mean, because you had the president of El Salvador in the office. He had just been at Mar-a-Lago not too long ago, and they've worked this out. They're going to be building more prisons. They're getting paid to house not people who are here without documentation. They who are also indigenous to the hemisphere, by the way. Let me just put it this way: the original Americans. But they are going to put Americans, just put them out to sea. I mean, are they going to give them a trial? I mean, what is this? You just get arrested and you get sent away? That's what they did to Mahmoud Khalil. They arrested him and they sent him away.
Yeah, he is going to get a day in court. He's had some hearings already, Khalil, and I've just skimmed the arguments, which frankly the government does not have any leg to stand on. Just saying that he was somehow supporting a terrorist group, Hamas, and they have no evidence of this. It's maybe even less than guilt by association. So again, as Mark just said, you have to hope that the people.
Okay. She just froze up a bit. But you were saying you have to hope that the people.
You have to hope that all different levels of civil society, and especially as the founding fathers tried to craft these checks and balances with the legislatures, our legislature, our Congress has been pretty terrible. The courts have been mixed. We'll see what happens. But even the Supreme Court has not given carte blanche to Trump. They have stopped him a couple of times. And I think if there's a place right now where they would stop him, it would be this notion that the president can send citizens of the United States, strip them of their citizenship rights, and deport them. I would think that Roberts would maybe take a stand on this. Again, you may disagree with other decisions, but this is getting to the point where it's the straw that broke the camel's back. And I think when Trump threatened judges, for instance, and of course, this you can see as a judge that you're threatened yourself. Trump should think twice about telling convicted. He made a big deal about it. Would only be the worst criminals, people that hit little old ladies on the back of the head. is his example of the worst criminal. And you know what? Trump is a federally convicted himself. He's really being, again, he's not the brightest ball, but he could actually be deported himself because he's been convicted. But he's saying, "Oh, with these terrible criminals, I have this deal worked out, and El Salvador is willing to take our money and have this offshore. We don't care about how they're treated." But I think the courts hopefully would be the backstop on this. And even with Khalil, and national security is the area that is the most fraught with danger, because almost anything goes in with national security. And we've seen this now for 24 years, even torture, all these things I just listed. When you use the pretext of national security, the president is given these wide-ranging emergency powers. By the way, when John Yoo came to Minnesota, he spoke at a law school, and I sat in the front row with my T-shirt, had a picture of a jail, and John Yoo was in the jail, and I sat right in the front row so he could see me. And he went on and on. He had just written his book about our top presidents throughout history have been war presidents that have seized power. That's his book, and of course he uses Abraham Lincoln. He goes, everybody thinks Abraham Lincoln is our greatest president, but at one point Abraham Lincoln signed off on the hanging of Native Americans in Minnesota at Mankato. But he reduced the number. At least he reduced the number, but he did sign off on that. And then he also, I think, was in this conversation with what's his name, the great. Can't remember his name, but he wanted to execute Southern soldiers, and apparently Abraham Lincoln did not go with it, but he was asked to, etc. So instead of following the law of war. So he used those examples to show that when it's an emergency, national security emergency, pretty much you throw the law out. And that's why you have genocide. Well, when he was done with his talk at the law school here, I raised my hand and I said, okay, John, this emergency has been going on now for 5 years, 6 years. It was only a few years after 9/11 when he came. I said, but when will the emergency end? Can you tell us when the emergency will end? And he goes, oh, yes, it'll end. It'll end. And of course, now it's 24, 25 years, and the so-called emergency is still going on. And so this is, once these things in the law, once these things set a precedent, it's really hard to turn around. And I think that, again, we have to hope for a Supreme Court decision. We have to hope for somebody like when McCarthyism was running rampant, and they finally said, have you no decency, sir? And whatever, it was like 2 years of this. So we have to hope for this moment, this tipping point, because this is really getting out of control. And Mark is right. Trump's not going to do this on his own. Someone should threaten to deport him because he's a convicted criminal. But so when people see their own ox being gored, like Roberts did when he's going after the judges and saying, well, if a judge decides something I don't like, we can impeach the judges. Okay, so our whole checks and balances goes up in smoke when you have one kind of like authoritarian, whatever, totalitarian person who says, I get all power now. I don't care about Congress. I don't care about the courts.
What is an emergency? Okay, help me.
There was a short emergency. I think that, under Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, when they came across a terrorist suspect learning to fly who had cash and was all this suspicion thing, they asked for an emergency order to search. They didn't go through the normal FISA process, which takes 2-3 months. They asked for an emergency exception. And then they were not given it. But I think there is, in some cases, very short, there could be a need for emergency. But nothing like 5 years, 6 years. When the planes were still up in the air on 9/11, I asked for an emergency exception to be able to interrogate the terrorist suspect that we had in custody, because he maybe knew of more planes that would fly into buildings. And at that time, there is actually an emergency exception to Miranda rights. It's the Supreme Court carved it out, and they said in life and death situation, you don't have to give Miranda rights. There's an emergency exception. I was arguing this with the U.S. attorney at the time, and they would not allow us. Now, that was an emergency. That's the first memo in the 9/11 legal file, is my memo saying,
well, I mean, Mark, because
doesn't matter.
Okay, now there we go.
You can't push this into weeks and months. It's only when somebody, it's kind of like self-defense. It's got to be very short and very constrained. And again, these people are lawyers. They know these things. They are doing this because they're grabbing more power. You don't have an emergency go on for 25 years.
But it has. And Mark, you're saying that really this is who we are. This is not new.
Yeah, the essence of it is not new at all, but there is something phenomenal that's happening. Remind me, who did Obama run against the second time? I'm blanking. It's Senator.
Oh my goodness!
Conventional.
Yes,
Mitt
Ron.
Romney. There
Thank
you
you.
go.
I
Thank you.
can't believe I blanked on that. These memorable people.
We want to forget. We want to forget.
You're right. You're right.
Yeah, but I think what's happening is comparable to what happened when Obama debated Mitt Romney. Everybody said he did such a terrible job and all of that kind of thing. And many analysts said that the reason that he didn't do well is because he was not accustomed to people challenging him.
Mhm.
He had been president for 4 years. He had grown accustomed to people being deferential, not debating him or challenging him and respecting what he had to say. And now here he was facing someone challenging him for the presidency, who was going after him, in a way that he was not used to. And I think that that's what we're seeing with the courts right now. I've been practicing law for 40 years, and I I could not in my wildest dreams imagine going into a court and interacting with a judge in the way that the Trump lawyers have been interacting with these judges. Basically, telling them that they can, go jump off a cliff if they want, that they're going to openly defy their orders, they're not going to cooperate, they're not going to comply with timelines, they're not going to do anything, just being openly defiant. And I know that on those few occasions, when I have dared to get a little bit aggressive or to do things that sort of, approach the line of being what the judge would regard as disrespect. There was a very quick response, which let me know that the next step for me would be a jail cell because of contempt or something else. If or maybe if I got off easy, paying a fine. So I think that these judges are not accustomed to this type of brazen, bold, defiance. I mean, they issue orders and they expect them to be complied with, and these people just ignore them and tell them that to their faces that they're not going to comply. And I think that it's probably left a number of the judges a little bit stunned. They don't quite know what to do with this. We can only hope that they'll get over it. But I think in the case of the Supreme Court, I'm really, really concerned because, with respect to the return of the wrongly deported young man, their language was not clear and was not direct in terms of ordering the Trump administration to return this man. They just basically said they used weasel words and said they needed to facilitate it. And certainly, when you're dealing with somebody like the Trump administration and the Trump people, then they're going to seize on those kinds of things and exploit them for all that they're worth. And whether the Supreme Court is prepared to go to the mat on this, I have strong doubts. I think that this is something that they will allow to go on and on and on until finally it's disclosed that this young man, unfortunately, has been killed, or people just forget about it.
Is this Colleen Rowley? Is this could this culminate in being a constitutional crisis? Or is it a crisis of this? Are we looking at whether the republic will survive? I mean, because to me, foundational to citizenship is the right not to lose your citizenship. Just goodness. Or am I misreading things?
I think we already are looking at a constitutional crisis for the exact reason that Mark just explained. When judges are intimidated and these checks and balances and the Bill of Rights and the First Amendment, freedom of speech, the academic freedom, etc. All of this is just really kind of dissipating right now. And some of it, a lot of it is due to Trump seizing the power and everything. Some of it is due to other things that have gone on. I mean, the so-called empire that we've had, where we've had the luxury of putting economic sanctions because we were economically more powerful than the top superpower, military and economic. Well, that's kind of going in the other direction. So when this happens, the people that are in our power become more desperate. And I think that this may be the explanation, because we actually have an empire. I know, Santita, we've talked about this before, about 200 and some years, the Romans and all these Spanish and the British. And by the way, when you think about deporting your citizens, think about the British sending their criminals to Australia and to Georgia. I think Georgia, Australia.
Georgia.
So, in times, that's exactly right. This has been going on for a long time, but we have a smaller world now. Back then, this was like, oh, we're sending our criminals to I have a famous song in Ireland where they're sending the Irish people that were against the British government, and they're going to go off to Australia and never see anybody again. But, those were considered, the world was larger. It was considered not inhabited. You could send people to colonialize, a new place. All of this there's a background to it, and it's the empire going down, and we're caught up in how many wars, at simultaneous wars and a genocide, if not more than one genocide. And I think this is stressful. It's stressful on everybody, but it's certainly stressful on the people trying to maintain power in the United States too. And maybe it's an explanation for why some of our officials are not, they are not doing what they should be doing, which is standing up to this. It's tax day today. April 15th there was a rally in Minnesota. I think going to start really soon in front of Senator Klobuchar's office. And it's about tax money that's going for all of the wars, going for the genocide in Israel, instead of for human needs. And, all the infrastructure that Trump and Musk are cutting. They're cutting all these jobs and these different programs, environmental programs, all kinds of things. And the money is not being cut from the Pentagon. Anyway, so it's a perfect day to be talking about this empire that now is think they're desperate. We got to maintain power. So all of the tax money is going into war, genocide, in order to maintain power, as opposed to what really, think about it, human needs. This is going to destabilize our country. If you think we're going to have more domestic terrorism when people can't get health care and the VA is shut down, and they're shutting down all of these things. So that's going to be even more destabilizing. And I predict we'll have more domestic terrorism actually in the United States. But the truth is, yes, it's a constitutional crisis already. And, there's only a few ways that we can get back to a little more stability. But under Trump, I would be very pessimistic, like Mark, as I don't think it's going to happen. And maybe we have to hit ground bottom before people get a little more, wake up a little better about this. I know there's a resistance, but it's too politicized. The resistance makes it seem like it's just one person. And no, there's a lot more complicated reasons for why all of this is happening.
And it's politicized, partisan. It's like, wait a minute, it's not right, left, it's right and wrong. But that's not where we are right now. Everything it's red and blue. But I guess in many respects, the founding fathers said we could be here. That's why, what is it? George Washington said, please do not have these two parties. That is not going to be good. It will end in tyranny. And for that reason, and many others, here we are. Attorney Mark Fantrue, where do you see this going? Do you see people becoming upset at the prospect, or do you think that people will be bothered by the prospect of being deported, or will it have to happen in their neighborhood? Will it have to be someone, your neighbor, who snatched, or you, or your son, your daughter, your child, your husband, your partner?
I don't think that they're going to be bothered by the idea of people being deported, but I do think that ultimately this is going to come down to the white working class in this country, because everything turns on them when you're talking about Trump and things Trump. They constitute his base. They are the source of his leverage and his power, because all of these spineless politicians who won't stand up to him don't stand up to him because they perceive that the broad masses of white workers will come and get them if they in any way offend the Trump phenomenon, or if they oppose Trump in any way, and that's where it all comes down to. So they remain loyal to him at the moment, and he is becoming less and less concerned about them. But to the extent that he's not concerned about them, he does that, and he becomes less concerned at his peril, because these are people who demonstrated their capacity to vent their rage, at the Capitol. We know what they can do. And I think that historically, people have known what the white working class is capable of doing, which is why there has been an ongoing process of keeping them ignorant, of keeping them confused, and misdirecting their frustration and their anger when it should have been directed at the elites and at the powerful, at multinational corporations, at billionaires, and at other people. Their anger and rage has been focused on others. It's been focused on immigrants. It's been focused on Black people. It's been focused on brown people. It's been focused on anybody else who's not white and is not part of the white working class. And for so long, it has been effective. But the possibility that's present with what we're going through now is that as Trump continues his reign of insanity, and he continues to destroy the US infrastructure, he continues to torpedo the economy, he continues to impact the things that mean the most to white workers, and they become increasingly frustrated. Their patience runs out, and they no longer are willing to give him the time that he needs, presumably to bring down the price of eggs. Then they will become enraged. And what hopefully will happen, well, we can't count on it, because racism is so deep and so much a part of what this country is all about. And it's so much a part of what white working class culture is all about, that at some point, hopefully, they will be able to look at everything as it is unfolded, and they'll do at least some minimal analysis and come to terms with the fact that their guy is the president of the United States, that even with him in office, and even with him having done away with so-called DEI, which is code for any kind of advantage that's given to Black and brown people, even with him having purged to the extent possible any record of accomplishments by people of color, even with him having deported large numbers of people, who are the others, even with him having this ongoing campaign to rid the country of people who are not white and who are not part of the working class, even with him having done all of the things that presumably would eliminate the threat as it has been presented to them, that they're still having a very low quality of life, that they're still dealing with hardship, that they're still dealing with limited opportunities for upward mobility and progress, that they're still suffering. And they look and they see that in all of this, people of color have been totally absent. They've played no role in directing policy. What limited leverage and opportunity and influence that they have has been suppressed or eliminated, that many of them have been removed from the country. Then hopefully they will have some semblance of intelligence that will allow them to say, it couldn't have been them. And if they reach that conclusion, then Trump is really, really facing a lot of trouble, because these are people, who will vent their fury And if they come to the conclusion that he's the one that's responsible for their pain and responsible for their problem, then Lord help him.
Heaven help us. I mean, Colleen Rowley, do you see the finger being pointed at the Trump administration eventually, ultimately, by more and more Americans, or not?
I think the tariff debacle, where actually his mega base saw prices go, as a result of tariffs, prices going up and stock market going down, dropping like lowest it's ever been in 3 days. That already created a little crack in the mega side. There were some cracks, that the there's said that he orchestrated this all. He never was going to have the tariffs. He never was going to try to actually encourage more industry in the United States by having the tariffs. He just wanted to use those to go after China. And so that's possible, but I still think it's probably a mixture of things, incompetence, whatever. But there was a riff in the base. The other good, I will say one more good thing. The deportation of the El Salvador, I think his last name is Garcia.
Mm-hmm.
He's the one who's married and he's got
From
3
Maryland.
kids. Okay, you know who stood up for him? The union president. The union president, I want to say he's a full-time sheet metal apprentice. The building trades have a lot of immigrant people that are putting on roofs and doing all kinds of different jobs. It's hard to get somebody to work construction these days. And the so-called white worker, they maybe are gone into other things or whatever. A lot of immigrants are doing jobs that are hard to fill. Anyway, very good thing that union president said, hey, we're all stand with him. We've got to, support him and oppose Trump's deportation. So that's another good thing that existed, and maybe that would also spread, and other leaders like that would civil society would and academics. I mean, again, it's good to see the legal scholars immediately pouncing on this notion of deporting, stripping people of their American citizenship. I mean, that was good. They're not just saying, oh, well, I don't know about that. Let's ask Pam Bondi what she thinks. She's the attorney general. No, there were quite a few that came out and said, this is absolutely, completely unconstitutional. You cannot take away citizenship and deport people to foreign prisons, etc. So there's some good things, too. We don't want to be completely negative. And I think a lot of it is, day by day, so much happens. We just have to wait and see how it's all playing out. But, go out and protest. I think that's the answer for the average person. Today, there's people protesting at our senator's office about tax money being used for wars and genocide. I'm helping file a lawsuit, a class action lawsuit. It's not done now. I have to get signatures of our plaintiffs. I'm not a licensed Minnesota attorney, so we're doing this pro se, and it's called Taxpayers Against Genocide. And we are going to sue our congresspersons who have all voted to send bombs. In California, the first judge who saw this said, you know what, if a president decides to commit genocide, that's a political decision. This is a frivolous lawsuit. I cannot believe a judge saying that a lawsuit trying to tell people that you have to stop genocide, the worst crime. I mean, I worked in the FBI for 24 years. I saw child killers, all kinds of things, but genocide literally tops the list. You cannot get a worse crime. And then a California district judge says, well, I at first glance, this looks to be frivolous because that's a political decision of the president. Oh my gosh. But that's, again, very depressing to see that kind of way of caving into stuff. But, we're going to try it here in Minnesota. And hopefully we land on a better judge with a little more integrity that says, No, there's a lot of laws in Constitution. There's at least several laws that prevent arming a country committing genocide.
Attorney Mark Fancher, I want to get some closing thoughts from both you and Colleen Rowley, because this is, you know, crisis creates opportunity. We are in crisis. Is there an opportunity here? If so, what is it? If not, what isn't?
Well, yes, there definitely is a crisis, and I think that I heard a really good sermon on Sunday, and this whole problem, this whole phenomenon that we're experiencing, was described as a real challenge to how we identify
Mm.
who we continue to think, who we think, what we think of ourselves. And it can lead us to believe that we're fearful. It can lead us to believe that we're cowardly. It can lead us to become intimidated and weak. But if we are in communication with God, if we're praising Him and reaffirming that notwithstanding all of the things that happen here on earth, that still we are still the children of the Creator of the universe. And there is no reason for us to cower. There is no reason for us to be afraid. There is no reason for us to compromise our principles or our morality. And that in and of itself is effective resistance, because what all of this is aimed at is reducing us to people who don't fight back, to people who are weak and people who are cowardly. And if we affirm for ourselves that we're strong, that we have integrity, that we're connected with the Creator of the universe, then it doesn't matter what they do or what they say. If large numbers of people do that, then they can't control us. They can't get us to collaborate. They can't get us to go along with programs that are totally immoral, which violate human rights and any sense of decency. I noticed that one of the commenters pointed out that we had that episode with Japanese internees, people who were disappeared, and people who just stood by. We can't just stand by. We have to remember that we're children of God, that we have a certain duty to uphold everything that He holds dear and to stand firm, notwithstanding what happens. We do that, we win.
Colleen Rowley, your closing thought?
I was lucky enough to meet Korematsu when at the ACLU 2004 convention in San Francisco. And I took a picture. It was Korematsu, myself, and Daniel Ellsberg. And you know what? I think back, what bravery it took for I think he was like 19, 20 years old. He was very young. He was the only one to take it all the way up to the Supreme Court, challenging the Japanese internment. And when I met him, he was probably close to 90 years old. He was an older man. He's now long dead. But that kind of example is what people should keep in mind. There's Martin Luther King Jr. There's a lot of people that have been courageous in the past, and we frankly are in that situation again. We're in that situation. People put you on lists, because I'm an anti-war, anti-genocide. I know there's Israeli groups. They've got lists. They're sending it to Trump of all these people. But you know what? I'm not going to let it deter me. I'm just going to continue to do what we speak out against it, because in the scheme of things, you can't live with yourself if you back down and say, no, I'm scared, they're going to do this to me, they're going to surveil me, etc. So keep on keeping on and do things that I don't encourage people to do anything illegal, but even do what we can. There's ways to resist.
Well, you're supposed to challenge unjust laws. That's what Dr. King taught us. Slavery was legal. It was illegal for women to vote. So many things have been legal that we know are morally indefensible. And I think that Americans have to stand up. But we're the ones who have to make the decision, Colleen Rowley, as you did with the FBI. Not once, but twice. And I'm sure you just saw things and said, enough. Enough. If we don't stop here, this is going to be problematic for us. Have you no shame? That should resonate with us. Have you no shame? Mark, that should resonate with us. And, in this Holy Week, and I send greetings to all of my brothers and sisters, my Jewish brothers and sisters who just celebrated Passover, and our Muslim brothers and sisters who just came through the season of Ramadan. I'm Christian. This is Holy Week for me. And I know that miracles do happen. And not just that, I know that Jesus was killed by the state. That was a state killing. It was an execution because he stirreth up the people. He wanted the people to know exactly who they were, whose they were, and why they had the obligation to rebel against an occupying government that was mistreating them. Now we are being occupied. Are you going to stand up for justice? Hey, I got a file. I get it. I'm all right with that. In fact, where I come from, the people that I know, they put their lives on the line. You put your life on the line, Colleen Rowley. I respect that. I respect that. You chose to not be comfortable. You were disturbed and you were uncomfortable. That's what Jesus came to do. He came to comfort the disturbed and disturb the comfortable. Thank you. Mark Fancher, you do it every day. And you're defending the least of these. Thank you for that. Everybody, we have our part. You will be walking down the street. Anything you do can get you snatched off the streets and disappeared. That is what they're telling us. And so you should be concerned about Mahmoud, about Mr. Garcia, about everyone. They don't have to share your name. They do share your humanity. And this is not right. This is not right. And this season calls upon us to do that which is right, because I tell you what, there is a resurrection. Oh, you're going to bear your cross. You're going to be on the list from the alphabet boys and girls. That's going to happen. But what's more important to you? That which is eternal life? It should be. Being right, doing the right thing for the right reasons. That's what this season teaches all of us, from whether we're in or out of faith. Please know that. God bless you, everybody. AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota, sending you much, much, much love and many blessings. And dare I say, keep hope alive. AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota.